All right, guys, sorry about that. We're having some technical difficulties, so I'm switching over to the cell phone here. I was trying to use my laptop, but that's not going to work apparently. And hopefully we were not having too many technical difficulties there. But what I was describing is the concept behind Brand New Congress. So again, full slate of candidates, 400 or more candidates that we're going to handpick and recruit from across the country based on nominations that we get from you, the people in these communities, that will help us figure out who in your communities is going to be able to best represent those communities. And we've had a lot of great success so far. We've had about 1,500 or so nominations come in, and out of those 1,500, we found almost 60 or so from across the country that are going to really meet the criteria that we need to bring us back on track. And what criteria are that? Well, they're people that are already deeply involved and in their communities, and through in their careers or in their lives, they've shown a willingness to sacrifice and put others first, right? What else? Well, they fit their community, and they are going to be electable. What does that mean? So in deep red districts like mine, Tennessee District 1, what that means is that they're going to come from a conservative background. They're going to identify with conservative voters and evangelical voters. They're going to be able to speak to those people and connect in a real deep and meaningful way. And in districts like, Tennessee District 9, for example, where it's a very deep blue district, and the incumbents are Democrats and winning by huge margins, they're going to be Democrats, and they're going to be able to speak to a progressive community and a progressive background. So that's one of the things that's going to be different about this, is that this is a post-party concept. So it's our belief that the American people have a whole lot more in common than they have that is separating them. And that means that we all want good jobs for ourselves. We all want good futures for our children and for our neighbors. We want our communities to be better. And we've got a lot of things that we agree on, even as far as ways to get that done. I mean, look at something that seems to be divisive, like the public option. Back when we were first looking at ACA, the public option had about 80 to 85% support from the American people, right? So what we saw is that the will of the American people and the political desires of the American people are more similar than they are different. So Brand New Congress is going to use that similarity and run in a post-party way in both Democrats and Republicans. And the slate that we've already started putting together is some really exciting people. As I mentioned before, we've got everything from pastors, teachers, and principals. We've got people that are already in their communities doing hard work, and it seems like the hardest thing to do is going to be able to talk these people into running. Because when they think of running for Congress, it's not something that really, that excites them. It's not something they wake up in the morning and think to themselves, boy, wouldn't my life be better if I could be a congressperson. No, they're already committed. They're already doing a lot of great work. So the hardest part's going to be convincing them that by putting together a slate of 400 or so people like them, that they can go to D.C. and continue to have an impact and continue to do the good work that they've already been doing, but do it for a much broader audience and a much larger number of people, right? And, the way we think we're going to be able to accomplish that is by sending these 400 people to D.C. and the goal is to eventually get a supermajority of Congress people that are working hard for the American people as opposed to the American oligarch, right? And wouldn't that be a novel idea, to have a House of Representatives and a Senate that is representing the needs and the will of the American people instead of the American oligarch? It's a novel idea, right? But we think that when we put this slate together, when we put the platform together, that people will indeed be excited enough not only to turn out in record numbers in midterm primaries, but they'll also be excited enough to donate, to volunteer, to knock on doors, and to be involved in this campaign as well. So this live stream, this office hour live stream, the purpose of this is for you all to be able to ask questions and me to be able to answer them. So what I'm going to do is, as we get questions coming in, I'll try to take those on and answer them. And it's coming up through my Facebook live stream here. So you'll just type in the questions as a comment below, and I'll try to deal with those as they come in. All right. So, William's saying that he does wake up in the morning wanting to be in office. And I tell you, that's been one of the things that I've noticed about, say, the Sanders campaign. And that, Bernie Sanders, the inspiration that he has delivered to so many people. And, that's been a lot of what drove me, for example, to get into politics was Bernie's run. I had never been involved in political work before, but as soon as I saw that there was a candidate that was out there appearing to represent my values and my needs and was not a person that was just connected to big money, I thought, well, I've got to do everything I can to help him get elected. And a lot of people are turning that political revolution into a desire to run for office. We've got some great people that are running for General Assembly, for example, here in Tennessee, and we've got people that are running for offices all across the country. And so I think there's a new breed of people that really want to be involved in the political process, not for a self-fulfilling reason, but for a selfless reason, because they want to be involved in making things different and making things better. So you're right. There are people now that want to be in office that are really good people too. So. Connie just asked us a question of how she can help BNC locally and talk future candidates into running. Well, the thing that we're really looking for people in the communities and all across the country to do is to send us those names in as nominations. And you can go to brandnewcongress.org/nominate. There's a lot of information about specific districts, so it'll give you sort of the profile of the candidate we're looking for in that specific district. And you can see the form there to send those nominations in. And we're going to take on the task in many ways of convincing these people to run and inspiring them to run. Part of that's going to be by showing them the platform that Brand New Congress is running to implement, and part of that is by showing them that there are literally thousands of other people like them that are willing to run also, and that there are tens of thousands and if not hundreds of thousands of people that are willing to do the work to make sure that they win their elections and they get into office. So Roger asked how we compare to Our Revolution. So Our Revolution obviously is very involved in the 2016 race, and with candidates from Zephyr Teachout to all over in the 2016 race. We're focused on one specific goal, which is the 2018 midterm primaries, right? And our goal is also focused on federal level, so U.S. House and U.S. Senate, whereas Our Revolution is focusing on state seats and down to school board members or state legislature, all across the spectrum there. So that's one big difference. And another big difference is that we're running behind one single platform with one single slate, whereas Our Revolution is basically helping candidates that are running running for office in a different way. It's not a unified slate per se. It's people with similar values and similar political agendas, but it's a little bit different than ours. I'm reading another question here that's coming in. What advice would you have for people like us? Well, so I don't really exactly understand the question from William there. It says, my dad took me to one of Bernie's rallies, and I decided I needed to be part of it. I'm going on to college next year, so I can be there. So I can be the change I want to see. Aha. So yeah, I mean, the advice I have for people that want to be the change they want to see is to get involved, whether it's with organizations like Our Revolution, whether it's with organizations like Brand New Congress, to stay involved, to keep this revolution moving forward, to donate your time, donate money when you can to help candidates that are running up against the billionaire class, and to stay active. That's the best way. We've got a really insane presidential election happening right now, and it's going to be important that we keep this momentum and this enthusiasm going on after this election, and that we don't do what we normally do after a presidential cycle, which is sit on our laurels and wait for the next presidential campaign. Because the idea behind Brand New Congress is that we're going to be focusing on, as I said, federal level, House and Senate. And that, the legislative branch, if they're working in unison to achieve a goal, is one of the most powerful branches of our government. they have way more power as a unified body than the judicial branch or the executive branch. So we can really, we can make laws, we can amend the Constitution, we can overturn vetoes, as you've recently seen. There's a lot that can be done. So, keep that in mind. That's where we want to stay focused on is those midterm primaries. And what's so great about the midterm primaries is that turnout is abysmal. So I've been looking through some of those turnout result numbers from 2014, and, you see some of these districts turning out as low as 8%. So if we get people inspired and we put together a slate that really turns people on and gets them ready to support that, we're not going to have to turn out a lot of people to really move the needle in some of these districts and overcome these entrenched incumbents. So thank you very much. Any chance BNC plans to sell merchandise, shirts, buttons in the near future? Absolutely. Actually, we're putting together an Act Blue store. So you're going to be able to buy shirts initially. Like the one that I'm wearing here. We've got this one that is a grassroots design out of California. It's got the grassroots, creating the fist that's essentially, I think it's one of my favorite ones. And then we've got some other ones as well. The logo shirt that's got the representation of the seats and then the star which says Brand New Congress. Those are going to be available early next week. You'll be able to go to Act Blue and get those. And I encourage you to do that. If you're not on our mailing list, so if you've never been to brandnewcongress.org and signed up, I encourage you to do that. That way you'll be one of the first to know when we do launch the store. So we got a question coming in from Brand New Congress. For people who have no political experience and may be unprepared for corporate lobbying, and who gets government contracts and general corruption, government regulatory, how will we prepare these people for the scary stuff that's waiting for them? So how do we send people that are inexperienced legislatively to Washington, D.C. and prepare them to stand up against corporate interests, lobbyists, and the corrupt and, the entrenched system that we have? Well, first of all, we send them with other people like them. I think that's one of the things that's going to make this it's going to empower our incumbents, is that they know that they're not alone. The other thing is we're going to have a powerful system behind them. So Brand New Congress is going to be putting together a fundraising mechanism. We're going to be putting together a volunteer base. We're going to be putting together essentially a replication of the current system that we have that keeps people in check for the oligarchy. Except we're going to do it for the American people, right? And for people that are involved, and that's one of the ways we're going to support these candidates. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to train them. So we're going to give them training for debate training. We're going to give them media training. We're going to give them legislative training, and we're going to really prepare them for what comes up when they're in office, and it enables them to stand strong and wait on the reinforcements as we go through other cycles and other elections and start trying to replace as many of these corrupted politicians as possible through that process. If there was another outsider or progressive in 2020 presidential race, would BNC get involved? So BNC is absolutely going to be supporting people that are fighting for the American people, and we're going to do that right now at the federal level in Congress, so House and Senate, and hopefully in the 2020 election we'll also be able to weigh in on the presidential race and support the most progressive candidate there as well. Yes. All right, and again, so one of the biggest things that we need from people right now is to keep the nominations coming in. So that's how we're finding these great candidates, and that's how we know who's involved in your community and who's going to make a great representative. The other thing is, if you know people that know a lot of people, right? So, this person wouldn't be a good candidate necessarily, but they're very connected to their community, and they know a lot of people throughout the community, and they would be good at sending us nominations. Then go to, again, Brand New Congress/nominate and send us a connector is what it's called. So you'll see another form to send us a connector in your community, and then we'll call them and try to get nominations from them as well. So. Hello, Edie. How are you? I'm very excited to be part of this organization, and I want to just say that when we launched this concept, it was it's a long shot, right? Just like Bernie's campaign was. But one of the things I find most exciting about the Brand New Congress concept is, unlike a race for president or a race to be nominated, which has a binary outcome. You either win that race or you lose that race. So in Bernie's case, we lost that race, right? We're going to be able to have a full slate of candidates. So if we get 40% or 60% or 80% of what we're shooting for, we have fundamentally and radically changed politics in America. What I mean by that is, as we go through the primary process and we have wins and we have losses, every win that we have represents a seat in either the Senate or the House. So, we don't have to win all of our races to make a huge impact. So that's exactly, one of the things that motivates me the most. And the other thing that I find really encouraging about this process is that unlike, again, a presidential race or a presidential primary race, as you go on and it looks less and less likely that you're going to win, people's enthusiasm wanes, their involvement wanes, and you have fewer people to help you pull out a long shot. But in the case of brand new Congress, as we go forward, every win, as I said, represents a seat. So people, as opposed to their encouragement and their enthusiasm diminishing, it's going to go up. People will see our wins, and they'll say, okay, this is possible, and they'll become more and more active, hopefully. The other thing that's really great about this is that the plan that we have here has us, as I say, focusing on midterm primaries with Republicans and Democrats. Then as we go through that process, we'll also have recruited independent candidates to run in the districts that we didn't win the primaries in the general. So when it comes time for us to be in the general election in 2018, say we end up winning 40 or 50% of the races we're in, and we've got a lot of news coverage at that point, right? Because it's going to be even bigger than, say, the Tea Party, which got tons of media attention. So we're going to have another opportunity for the American people to support this concept of brand new Congress, but in the general election by voting for our independents. And that media coverage hopefully will be able to get people aware of who those candidates are in their districts, and then ultimately we'll be able to have that second shot at getting some seats in the House and the Senate. So it's extremely exciting. Stolen is different than lost. It is. So, and that is a question that I get a lot. How are we going to defend ourselves against fraud, right? Against election fraud and some of the shenanigans that you see. Well, the way we're going to do that is volume, volume, volume. The same way, the car dealer makes the best prices, right? We're going to hopefully inspire people to turn out in record numbers, and it won't take a lot of numbers to be record numbers in midterm primaries. As I said before, we're getting 8, 10, 25% turnout is exceptionally good turnout in the midterm primaries. So if we get people to turn out like they would in a presidential race or even a presidential primary, then it's going to be something that overwhelms the ability for shenanigans and for fraud, hopefully. So who are we looking for in New York? So again, if you're wondering where, who we're looking for in any district, the best way to find that out is to go to Brand New Congress /nominate, and then at the bottom of that page, you're going to see every district for every state, and you click on that district that you're wanting to nominate a candidate in, and you'll see a profile of the candidate that we're looking for. So if it's a evangelical candidate or a Democratic candidate, that will be outlined there at Brand New Congress /nominate. So you'll be able to see who you're looking for in New York. All right, and again, if you have any questions, remember just type them in. They're going to come up through the feed, and I'll make sure that I answer them. Let me make sure I didn't miss any here. And the process that we're involved in right now, obviously, is finding the slate and putting the slate together. But we're also working on the platform. So one of the things that we want to see happen and see changed is our focus on on fossil fuels for our primary source of energy right now. We think that just like we were able to rebuild our manufacturing to win World War II, we saw that that the American people came together, American companies came together, corporations, people, workers alike came together to build a base that could create and manufacture the war weapons that we needed to win World War II. And we want to see something similar to that, or similar to a Manhattan Project or a moonshot for our energy system. We want to get off of fossil fuels and onto renewables as quickly as possible. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, we've got a climate that's warming, and we've got weather that's killing people, and we need to protect our planet, and that's the most important reason. But the next reason is because we need jobs, right? And if we can create jobs and also be saving our planet at the same time, it's sort of a no-brainer. So we need a Congress that realizes that we need to, invest in significant amounts into our new energy process, and into a green energy system, rebuild our energy infrastructure, and start being competitive in the development of new green technologies in the energy sector. The other thing we want to see happen is we want to see our products made in America again. So, whether it's my tablet that I'm using or my laptop or, most of the products that we're using aren't created here in America, right? So we've seen, whether it's NAFTA or CAFTA or permanent trade relations with China, we've seen that this has really hurt the American manufacturing base. And in turn, it's hurt the American middle class. Last year, 40% of Americans made less than $20,000, right? And it's because we're about an 80% service economy. So we think that by investing again in manufacturing in America and by developing a partnership between business and the government, that we'll be able to incentivize people to start making their products here again. We'll have a tax code that incentivizes keeping your money in America and investing in your companies and building new and better things. And then that will hopefully inspire the American people, again, to turn out in record numbers in the midterm primaries. That plan to rebuild our infrastructure, rebuild our manufacturing base, and to propel us into a new way of creating energy and to lead, again, the world in something other than people in prison, right? To lead the world in development of those green technologies, to lead the world in development of new ways to manufacture in green ways, right? That's what we want to be leading the world again in, as opposed to, as I said, childhood poverty or the number of people in prison. We've got to. This is a great nation with great people, and it needs to be maximized to better everyone's lives, right? So, all right. So we've got some other questions coming in. That was the stolen is different than lost. But again, we're going to be able to hopefully overwhelm these incumbents. We're going to hopefully be able to overwhelm the ability of of an election to be rigged or to be stolen, and we're going to do that by getting more and more people involved. That's the idea here. So, all right, again, if you have any questions about the concept, the plan, the way we're going to run this campaign, just post them there at the bottom. All right, so one of the things I just sort of glossed over a moment ago that I really think is a hard thing to believe maybe, is that 40% of Americans made less than $20,000 last year. And I think that's one of the things that makes it hard for people. We see, again, in this presidential race, we see Donald Trump in many instances polling near Hillary Clinton, right? And one of the things I think is causing that to happen is that we see the Democratic Party in many ways is unable to say that, yes, Americans are hurting. Yes, we've had a recovery from the crash of 2007, 2008, but that recovery has been mainly money going to the 1%, mainly an increase in our stock markets, that we've seen quantitative easing that has eased the pain for banks and eased the pain for our top 1%, but it's not eased the pain for the American working class, right? And to think that 40% of Americans made less than $20,000, to how they are able to make that something that can support a family, and how that how they're able to have a good quality of life, making $20,000 a year, is hard for me to imagine, right? And that's one of the things I think that that makes something like brand new Congress necessary, is if we don't get a political force out there that recognizes that there is pain going on in America, that people are struggling, that things are harder than they appear to the wealthy, that we're going to have more people like Donald Trump coming in and taking that that angst and that fear and turning it into a weapon that they will then utilize against other people here in America. And that really scares me to know that that is possible, right? If we don't get out in front of this sooner rather than later, then we're going to have more little Trumps pop up. And hope, unfortunately, next time it may be somebody that's more articulate, somebody that's more capable of putting a string of words together into a coherent thought and staying on message. And then we'd be in trouble. I think at this point we've dodged a bullet when it comes to Donald Trump. And I think that we can't take that for granted, though. So that's why it's important for us to continue working after this election to rebuild our system here. What do we think about proposing term limits? So term limits isn't something that we're focused on initially. We think that if we've got a Congress that's working hard for the American people, and we've got members in the House that are learning how to the legislative process, and they're not manipulated and their votes aren't being bought by lobbyists, and the revolving door is closed, that term limits aren't as important as rebuilding our economy or rebuilding our democracy or getting us off of fossil fuels and into a renewable energy system. We think that the biggest focus really should be on making the American democracy and the American economy work for more people, right? And that term limits they're just not our focus right now. We want to see great incumbents doing great things, and once we get them, we want them to be there long enough to do their jobs well and to finish the job that they started. That's not to say that we think that it should be a lifelong career or you should see people in there for 30 or 40 years like we're seeing right now. It's just not our main focus. So thank you very much, Missy, though. All right, and again, any questions you have, post them there at the bottom and in the comments, and I will absolutely try to answer them. We've got about 5 more minutes or so left, I think. So get them in, and then we'll take care of it. All right, I'll tell you some of the other things that we've been looking at and thinking about with brand new Congress are ways in which we can fix our educational system. So we've got an educational system that is being run in many ways from the federal level, and teachers aren't being empowered to teach; they're having to teach to tests. We've got teachers that are being paid starvation wages in many cases. My wife actually is a teacher, and she teaches special ed here in Northeast Tennessee. And the people she works with, they're putting in some great effort. They're really talented people in many ways, but they're living on starvation wages. Some of them are making as little as $10,000 to $12,000 a year for near full-time work. And we have to have the profession of teaching become a much more respected profession again, and we have to give it the support that it deserves. And that's one of the things that we're going to try to accomplish with brand new Congress. We hope to have a slate of candidates that is representative of the American people in a lot of ways, but we want to see educators on that slate so that they'll be able to then focus on fixing our educational system. They will have been in the educational trenches, and they'll have some insight on how to fix that system. So, fix education and Citizens United, the rest will fall into place. That's a good argument there. Citizens United is certainly something that we intend to take on, and instead of having to have a Supreme Court overturn that decision, the great thing is if you have a majority or a supermajority in the Congress that is working again for the American people and supporting their needs and their will, then you can legislate that, right? So the Supreme Court interprets laws. Well, we can have an amendment to overturn the Citizens United decision, and we don't have to worry about the Supreme Court in that if we're successful in this. So, what are our plans for electoral reform so that we have no more Trumps and no more lesser evil? Well, we've got a lot of options there, whether it's instant runoff, whether it's, having open primary systems. We've got a system right now that has worked to provide us with 2 candidates that in many cases are, they've got some of the highest unfavorable numbers of any presidential candidate that we've had in recent history, right? And it's not that we have one of them, we have 2 of them. Now, a lot of people I know are Clinton supporters or Trump supporters that may be watching this feed. But whether you support either one of those candidates, we've got to be able to accept that our process is somewhat broken when the nominees from both parties have, 40, 50, 60% unfavorable ratings. There's something wrong with that. It's not a democratic process that is representing the will of the American people in any way, shape, or form. So one of the ways we're going to do that, hopefully, is through an open primary system and through legislative actions that enable more people to participate. Like, for example, the ability of people to be instantly registered when they turn 18 instead of having to jump through a lot of hoops. Having open primary systems, as I mentioned, and there's a lot of ways to fix that. But the most important thing is to have a body in the House and the Senate that is representing the needs and the will of the American people instead of the American oligarch. So I'm asked to please elaborate on BNC plans to run candidates with strong Judeo-Christian beliefs in red areas so that secular progressives understand better. Well, so the idea behind Brand New Congress is to run to win, right? And in deep red areas like the one where I live, Tennessee District 1, a lot of the voters in this area are evangelical voters, right? But luckily, there's a movement in the evangelical world and in the Christian community to start focusing more on fighting wars like the war on poverty, or to start working to feed hungry people and to create a better world and a better community, as opposed to focusing on infringing on people's rights to choose, or fighting things like marriage equality. And that movement, that sort of new movement in the evangelical world, is something that we want to embrace and support, and have those evangelicals on our slate. Those people that are ready to fight for the rights of citizens to have better lives, better access to health care, better access to education, and that want to keep us out of these costly, useless wars that do nothing to defend our freedom and do nothing to defend our nation. Those are the evangelicals that we're going to be supporting on our slate. Those are the evangelicals that we hope to work with to rebuild our communities and to rebuild our country. So that's what we mean when we say when we're searching for evangelicals to run on the slate in red areas. Those are the people we're looking for. How do we fix the redistricting problem that keeps people in office that work against us? Well, again, the idea that we're using to combat a lot of these problems is the unified slate of candidates that are running in both parties and that are working to fight for the needs and the will of the American people. And we think that by doing that we're going to be able to overwhelm some of the problems that we've had in redistricting, some of the ways we've had gerrymandering, Citizens United. If we can bring people together to fight for a slate of candidates that are then in turn going to be fighting for them, we'll hopefully get enough of a majority, if not in the first cycle, in the next few cycles, then to write legislation that protects us from things like gerrymandering, things like decisions like Citizens United. If we had a Congress that was made up of hardworking Americans that knew what it was like to fight to put food on the table, then we would have, I think, different outcomes when it comes to legislation. So that's our main focus there. How do we deal with the media, which was so predominant in fixing the primary by not allowing all candidates to have a voice? Well, what we're hoping is that we'll see media coverage for something like Brand New Congress, because it's going to be an interesting story to cover, right? The media they want eyes on their screen. They want to sell ads. They want to they want to make money, right? And what we think is that a concept like Brand New Congress is exactly the kind of thing they're going to want to cover. When you see 400 candidates united together, and that slate of candidates is a representative group, that it's got overrepresentation even in terms of people of color. So we've got a lot of representation of African Americans and Latinos and Native Americans, and you see a slate of non-millionaires, right? So non-career politicians, people that aren't millionaires, and you have a representative slate that's unifying people all across the country. That, I believe, will get coverage. We're going to see a lot of mainstream media coverage of that. And I think that, we won't have to, legislate or protest that. I think that's just going to happen naturally. So how do we fix the media once we're in? Well, one of the things that we could do is stop this these media conglomerates from forming, right? So just like we saw the government break up communication companies like Ma Bell, AT&T, that was, those monopolies were broken up. to stop these mergers of these big media companies and see, like right now we have 6 or 8 major media companies that own most of the media that we see, right? And that gives the ownership of those media conglomerates undue influence on our elections, on our, on our media, right? So that's one way. So stopping these mergers, breaking up these, these huge conglomerates and into smaller pieces, incentivizing the removing the profit motive from news coverage. We used to have regulations on the way airtime was given to candidates. We used to have regulations on the way media was news, for example, was detached from the rest of the media conglomerate, and it wasn't intended to make money, right? So those are some things that we're going to be able to do. But the main thing I think is stopping the mergers and stopping this, this push towards a unified, towards a one body or a few bodies that are running our media. It's the same thing that we're seeing, I believe, in our healthcare system, right? So whether it's, we've got all these mergers, so we're actually working towards a single payer system or a one healthcare provider system, but instead of it being a non-for-profit functionality that's run by and managed by elected officials that we can then have some influence on, it's being run by corporations, right? So what we see is that that things are moving towards, they tend towards monopolies, and they tend towards people and corporations merging together. And that's where I think that a brand new Congress could come into play and stop those mergers, provide access to Medicare for all through a single payer system. Same thing we would do with the media too. So you fix the media with laws, exactly. That's the way you do it. Bill Clinton's Telecommunications Act was, So there's a lot of ways that we can fix the media, but again, the key here is to have a Congress that represents people, not the oligarch. So, all right. Well, it looks like the office time is done for today. I want to thank everybody that showed up and participated in this. I'm really excited about the idea of continuing to do these office hours. As we start adding candidates to our slate, we'll put them into the office hours, and we want to continue to have a open dialogue and to have more transparency with than you've seen before in a lot of these political campaigns. So again, thank you for coming, and look forward to working with everybody. And brandnewcongress.org/nominate, and be sure to get those nominations in. And that's how we're going to get this slate put together. Have a great day.